Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to my panel. Today, we are going to be talking about some really awesome stuff, and that is mainly about meditation, but also how it intersects with Lolita and EGL. Well, same thing, but still. As a background for myself, I'm actually a guided meditation teacher, and I have been doing guided meditations and teaching people how to meditate for about 12 years. I've also been a Lolita for way longer than that. So I have thought a lot about the intersection of EGL and meditation quite a lot, and just how we can incorporate these things, together, because it's relevant to me. So I imagine it's probably relevant to some of you guys too. I mean, I imagine you wouldn't be here otherwise. So, but in any case, I actually run a community called the Cosmic Concordant, and we do free meditations every Sunday. It's on the school platform, and I really, really like it. I just actually started on there. But the community was started originally on Facebook in 2017. So I have been doing this with my group of people for a very long time, outside of, teaching classrooms full of people how to meditate as well. So, but the main thing is that I think it's really important, before we get into the presentation, what the point of meditation might be for you personally. And to that end, I'll give you a little bit of background as to why I got into meditation in the first place. Mainly the reason I got into meditation originally was that I had really, really severe anxiety. And about 12 years ago, ironically, I was having really, really severe panic attacks daily because of my job. And I was looking for anything that could help me with this. And I found meditation. I also found biofeedback, but that's another story. The point is that meditation has drastically improved my life in every single way. I genuinely feel like it has been an enormous benefit to how I exist in this world, and has been a huge toolbox of tools that have helped me go from being ceaselessly anxious, essentially, to I honestly can't even remember the last time I had a panic attack. I still get anxious from day to day. It doesn't cure it, but it definitely helps the symptoms, which is the things that we deal with every day anyway. So if that resonates with you and that's something that you have experienced, or if it's similar to your own story, then you are definitely in the right company. So, but without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into the presentation, the slides. All right, so Frilly Meditation, the Zen of EGL. Now, when I wrote the topic name, I thought that it might be a little bit cryptic in retrospect, but honestly, I still really like it. So hopefully it hasn't caused too much confusion. All right, so we're going to get into it. First of all, what is meditation really? Okay, so we're going to start with what meditation is not. Okay, and so here we have this handy dandy graph to help us. Meditation is not sitting completely still. Surprising, right? This one is a huge misconception that a lot of people have about meditation. There's actually a ton of different forms of meditation, and only some of them do you have to sit and be still. Some of them you can do ecstatic movement and dance and things like that. So ecstatic dance is a form of meditation. So it is also not clearing your mind of all thoughts. Again, this one tends to surprise people when I tell them that this is a misinformation that a lot of people understand about meditation, unfortunately, which is that they believe that you have to sit still and you have to be in one place and you can't move around and you can't think any thoughts. And those are true for some forms of meditation, but not all of them. Okay, which means that different techniques work for different people. And so another thing that meditation is not something you can be bad at. I love this pie chart. It's so cute. It's definitely something that you can feel like you're bad at, but that's not something you can actually be bad at, because meditation is a practice. And so it's something that you practice just like anything else. But also it fully depends on like the form of meditation that you try to see if you will be immediately like get into it or not be able to immediately get into it. Depends on your personal brain and your, you know, neurodivergence versus neurotypical like setup, your personal soup, brain soup. And lastly, it is not becoming one with usakumya. So I thought that this would be cute, but mostly you can use meditation to become one with the cosmos, you know, as the avatar of that is usakumya, but loosely, but it is not a requirement of meditation. So next we are going to get into the next slide, which is meditation is. Okay. Now, yes, the eternal wisdom of usakumya. Meditation is one of the most common goals of meditation, generally speaking, like I mentioned earlier, is to ease anxious thoughts, feel into our bodies, and give our inner subconscious a voice. Okay. And with this, it just really, the bottom line is that it gives you an opportunity to get in tune with yourself. And I feel like this specific thing is enormously overlooked in our general society. So, and ironically, you know, EGL is another really great way to get in tune with yourself, your true inner self. So they have that in common. But metacognition is another common goal of meditation. Metacognition is basically just an awareness of your thoughts, which is usually what most people think of when they think of meditation is, not just clearing all of your thoughts, but being aware of all of your thoughts. And this is a skill. So it actually takes time to develop. So it's something that you often can't really get like immediately when you first start meditating, especially if it's mindfulness or Zen meditation. But that's okay. It's that's something that you can build up to. Meditation also is, there's many, many forms of it. So there are lots of forms of meditations, and the reason why this is important is that they create different states of perception. Very briefly, there are different levels of your brainwave experience in your setup. Like when you are doing different things, your brain is utilizing different brainwaves and different frequencies. For example, when you are focusing on something and trying to solve a problem, you are in beta waves, like the beta spectrum is the right word that I was looking for. But basically from that space, if you just go below the beta spectrum, you can end up in the alpha wave spectrum. And the alpha wave spectrum is usually what most people think of when they think of meditation. However, you can actually meditate in all of the different bandwidths of your brain. So there is one higher than beta, which is gamma, which is like usually metta and compassion meditation. So it's very, very high up. And then, of course, we talked about beta, which is like focusing and solving problems. But there you can do concentrative meditation or like one-pointed meditation. And alpha, there's so many different forms of meditation that are in this one, and we will get into that a little bit later. But underneath that, there is theta, which usually has a lot to do with like, it's the realm of like hypnotism and the hypnagogic state, which is where we are dreaming essentially, or moving into a dream state as we're falling asleep. And then below that, there's the delta wavelength. And the delta wavelength is interesting because you can meditate into it on the very, very high end, but on the lower end, you are asleep, like deeply asleep. So you can't really meditate like past that. You are sleeping. So, but outside of that, very brief overview of that, all forms of meditation create states of natural altered perception. Okay. So when you are meditating, you feel different than when you do in your normal day-to-day life, usually. There is more attention to detail. There is more experience of the thing with like the thing itself, whatever it is that you are doing, like being in the present moment, as an example. But these states of altered perception, they exist on a spectrum from slightly different from our daily life and to extremely different from our daily lives. So, and like I said previously, like for example, the being hypnotized, being under hypnotism or self-hypnosis is enormously different experience than, doing light meditation of like being mindful and like just being present, as an example. And it's using two different wave bandwidths. So that's part of the reason why they're so different. But that being said, meditation is proven to lower stress. This is actually usually the most useful thing that people need to know about meditation. It's the common reason why people tend to get into meditation in the first place. But it reduces anxiety, as we talked about earlier. It promotes emotional well-being. It enhances self-awareness, which is also linked to metacognition, and tons of other health, mental, and social benefits. So the fact that it can like help your life just by doing it like pretty regularly is really, really cool. I am personally, like I said, proof of this. This is an experience that I have personally had over the many years that I've been doing it, that I am able to move through my life in a way that I'm not constantly being barraged by like the outside world, where I have been able to essentially create stability within my own sense of inner safety, and my own sense of inner calm and peace is in many ways unflappable, specifically because I have these tools to use in my day-to-day when things, start to get maybe too high up, too anxious, like too agitated, too activated. I get nervous about like presentations and stuff like this. So I am a little bit anxious right now, but with the techniques that I have learned over the years, even like before the shooting started, for example, I did a really, really brief, like 2 minute or 2 minute like meditation really quickly, just to like lower the agitation. And you'll see that like when you start to do them like more frequently, you can physically feel it in your brain, like what the difference is between like being activated and being like calm is. And throughout this presentation, you'll notice that I'll start to get like more and more comfortable. And that is like energetically a very big difference of activation and like calm. And later on in the presentation, we're going to do a meditation together. So you'll get to feel like as deep into it as I get to feel all the time, which is really cool. So, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. So, but the main important like thing about the two main things that I want to know, I can't talk. The main two things I want to teach people about meditation is that there are tons of techniques to choose from. So picking the one that works best for you, or a handful that work best for you, is so much more important than like trying to force yourself through a meditation that doesn't work for you. And also that meditation at its broadest is a toolbox, like full of different techniques. So they're meant to help you come into alignment with yourself and come into alignment with the present moment. And so if the meditations that you have tried in the past did not work for you for whatever reason, then there is extremely likely that there is a different technique that would work for you for, a different purpose or for a different, reason. But coming into alignment with the world around us is really, really helpful to feel grounded and in the present moment. So moving on. All right, so meditation is an extension of wellness, but fashion can also be that. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty with EGL. Lolita culture exemplifies peace through its ideals, okay? And you might call me idealistic for this, but because I've been in the community for so long, I have seen highs and lows and mean people and nice people. And at the end of the day, the ideals that we care about the most and the reason why we are drawn to this fashion and the reason why we are in Lolita culture together is because a lot of us are drawn to the same things. And those are, number one, joy. Okay. Why else would we dress up in frilly outfits unless it made us happy? So this is like really, really helpful, in the very, very beginning, because like this signifies to me that if you are already a Lolita, or if you're already in, Gyaru, or if you're already in an alternative fashion, you are already going against the norms and like, what society thinks is like normal about clothing. You're already expressing yourself through clothing. And why else would we do it unless it was fun? So it is the number one reason why we do this, which is joy. And so joy seeking is enormously helpful for our mental health, but it is also something that we're going to get into in the next like few slides about how this relates to meditation. But again, I already mentioned expressing ourselves through clothing is so fun. And it makes me feel like more like my true self. And ironically, that's also how meditation makes me feel. So there is also that. Another thing is freedom. So we're going against the grain. We're going against what, society thinks we should do. We're dressing up in our full regalia and going out in public, and people stare at us and people take pictures, even though we don't want them to, without permission usually. And people come up to us and ask, cute questions and also dumb questions. And so we face pushback just by, choosing freedom and choosing to live authentically within the fashion that we love. The last thing, of course, there's like a huge list of these things, but these are like the main ones that I wanted to point out. The last one, of course, is connection. We are constantly connecting, not just to ourselves and what we care about and, what makes us happy, but also to each other when we do meetups like this one, or we do meetups in person, or we do like, just little like, mini meetups with just like, two friends or like one friend, and we get to dress up together and have camaraderie and have like connection. And so this connectivity of Lolita is so holistic and so important and so like, so big as far as like, community is concerned, because we are communal creatures as human beings, and that's really important for us to do. But EGL is at its core self-devotion and self-love, okay, which are both forms of self-care. And self-care is a buzzword for meditation more often than not, taking baths and drinking a nice warm beverage or a glass of wine, perhaps after a long day, and, experiencing what the pleasures of life and like what life has to offer. This is devotion to the self. We spend so much money on our clothing. We spend so much time on finding our clothes and like our dream dresses and hunting things down. We spend so much attention to detail on putting together coordinates and making sure that they look as beautiful as they possibly can, and making ourselves feel as beautiful as we possibly can. And that is devotion. Like that is devotion to the fashion, but it's also devotion to ourselves, because why else would we do it? So I'm so glad. I'm happy that you guys are resonating with this, because like this has been so impactful to me to think about over the years, because for a long time, I really thought that like I kind of had to pick one or the other to like be into fashion or be into meditation. And that is not true. You can be, you can contain multitudes. You can like whatever you like. There are lots of Lolitas, of course, that also really like black metal, for example. And so like, like we can like different things. They don't have to look a certain way. And I think that that's really important. Of course, Lolita, it has, rules and structure and legacy, and that's, another part of it. But that being said, the required dedication and attention to detail are all opportunities for more fully embodied experiences. And so every single part of doing Lolita and like wearing it and being in community with other people also doing it are all like opportunities for us to chill out and like use meditative techniques like in tandem with those things. But the main thing that I think is a takeaway as far as like Lolita is concerned, and this sounds kind of obvious, but what we wear has a direct impact on our moods. Like I know personally that when I was working my last career, and I mentioned this briefly, that I was really, really anxious in my old career, and it's because I was modeling. And one of the reasons why Lolita became so much more important to me, like while I was modeling, was that I was often doing like jobs constantly where I had to wear clothing that I didn't like and makeup that I didn't like. And, because it was someone else's vision, that's how I was being paid. And so it was often that I would be put into clothing, and the products were always nice generally, but it never felt like me because it wasn't my expression. I was basically a glorified mannequin. And so in some ways it was very dehumanizing in that way. But this presentation is not about that. So we're going to move on. But above all, meditation is a practice. Okay. As I mentioned previously, like meditation is something that it takes time to get good at, and it takes time to really like be able to feel yourself into it. And it takes time and attention to detail and noticing yourself and your inner space to really get the hang of them. It is easier with a guide, to be clear. Having a guide is kind of like having training wheels, which is one of the reasons why I offer free meditations like every single week. And I've been doing that since 2020. So I think coming up in the next like month, I will have done 365 days of meditation with my community, which is really cool in the past 6 years. So but the point is that you can't start out as an expert. And this is the same thing as when we first all started in EGL and when we all first started in Lolita. Like when I first started as a Lolita, I didn't know what I was doing. Like none of us did, realistically. Like if you grew up like with Instagram and you like had the opportunity to see other people like actually wearing the fashion that you love, and like really like had access to like all of these things that were like you would have to like buy from overseas and things like that. It used to be so much more difficult to get that information. And so my baby Lolita days, like baby Rory days, were just like so cringy. But that's I think something that ties a lot of us like older Lolitas together, and that's okay. I have compassion for that version of myself who just really loved like the idea of dressing up like a doll and feeling beautiful. And but I really didn't know what I was doing. Like I had no like I tried to understand the rules, but the only thing that was happening back then was like live journal and like maybe like the very beginning of the Facebook groups, and like there were like Angel Fire websites and stuff, and like talking about Lolita. And then of course like it was very difficult to get things shipped from Japan. And it wasn't until I actually physically lived in Japan that I actually started to like really understand the fashion. And so that's something that I had an experience of that a lot of people haven't had the experience of. But the point is that like your attention to detail and your personal aesthetic within the fashion that you love, whichever one that may be, of course, like this includes like Gyaru and like any J fashion or any alternative fashion. Like I'm also goth. So, that your attention to detail will fine tune over time, just like your ability to meditate and get deeper and deeper and deeper into natural and altered states are or can be. Grammar. Anyway, I know we can all relate to like being, baby Rorys. So I figured I should mention this, that like we all have to start somewhere. But anyway, many of the rituals that we already do, such as the art of making cords, as I already previously mentioned, exploring tea culture. This is a big one because it has so much to do with like etiquette and rules and attention to detail. For example, the specific like temperatures of like specific types of tea, like there's so much that goes, so much nuance that goes into tea preparation just by itself, without even talking about like high tea, low tea, like English tea or Japanese tea or Chinese tea, or like it's an infinite well of information. And so the attention to detail of like really having like a good experience on that level is like really quite, there's a lot, and it's all a ritual. So me too, I really love the peace and calm of the tea, of like preparing tea. Right? Well, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a full ceremony, but like the ritual itself of like just paying attention to it and like being in the present moment is a practice. The art of making chords, I kind of skipped over this, but like the depth of this is really apparent when you think about it, because since we all started from, somewhere. And for those of you who are still new to Lolita, like, I don't want to exclude you. Like, this actually might help with you guys. As far as the art of making chords is concerned, like there are rules and there are structures to it. And this actually really helps with, really thinking deeply into it and like making decisions that are really resonant with you, and also that aesthetically feel good, like with the outfit. There's also like the part of it of like, putting together things in your mind, which we will get into in a little bit, which is technically visualization meditation. But especially if you're thinking about like buying a piece that you don't already have, and like trying to think about like the things you already have and if it will go with those things, and like hoping and praying that like the reds or blues or purples, or pinks or yellows match, which is always a struggle. The creams, like I don't really have this much of an issue with black. And ironically, I feel like that's one of the reasons why I kind of gravitate towards black, is that they're easier to match more often than not. But creams are kind of a nightmare sometimes. But that being said, like these are all practices, like these are all things that we do habitually to like get into understanding the fashion better. Preparing for a meetup is another really good example, where you are not just putting together a cord and like putting on the cord and like doing your makeup, and like all of these things are practices. They're ritual practices. And we might not do them the same way every time, but that's not what's important. What's important is that we are paying attention to the detail, and we're looking into it as if we're trying to create something that doesn't already exist. And that, space of creation is incredible. And it is also technically under the umbrella of meditation. So outside of that, there's also a point, of course, where you're preparing for a meetup, when you're about to leave and you're about to go like meet people, some of which maybe you don't know. And for me, that's always like very anxious, like space, or like I'm excited, but like my body doesn't know the difference between excited and anxious. And so I just feel anxious. And like during that space also, like you're thinking so much that like, this is a space where you're like trying to think of like all of the outcomes of like how things can go, or like, or maybe all the bad outcomes, if you're like me sometimes. And even within this space, it's kind of a ritual to try and like calm yourself down. Your body and your brain are not doing a very good job of calming yourself down and keeping yourself safe in this space, but it is doing its best, which is why you're anxious about this in the first place, assuming you have the same experience as me or similar. Anyway, the dedication to finding dream items is a big one. Okay. So we are constantly, at least for me personally, I'll only speak for myself on this, but I am constantly looking on like Lace Market or, Facebook, even like the Facebook groups, occasionally even like the reseller apps like Mercari, especially since like they combined with the Japanese company now. And because I remember when it wasn't combined before, and I used to have to buy things through Buyee on Mercari, and it's so much better now. Like, I envy you guys, actually, your ability to use Mercari without like a freaking shopping service. But anyway, um, Yahoo auctions back in the day, if that gives you an indication of how old I am. And, just trying to track things down. Okay. Because the thing is that like all of the things that we love the most are limited runs. They only make so many of each thing. And so if there's something that you love, your dream dress that came out like 10 years ago, you have to hunt for it. And it's a treasure hunt. And so when you finally get that thing, and this happened to me relatively recently, like late mid last year, where I had been hunting for a specific print for like 10 years, 12 years, like since it came out, basically, because I didn't have any money when it first came out, so I couldn't buy it. And I saw it in a thrift store on my very, very first trip to Japan in Osaka. And it was in the store called Violet Blue, I think is the name of it. It's a thrift store in Osaka. I don't know if it still exists. But the point is that I saw this beautiful, beautiful dress, which was the blue colorway of End of Immortal Eden. And it had just come out like around that time. And it was sitting at the thrift store because I guess the person who got it didn't want it anymore and hadn't worn it. And I remember looking at it on the mannequin and just being like, it's so beautiful. And I wish that I had money so I could have bought it at the time, but I didn't. And so, but that image of the mannequin with End of Immortal Eden on it for years just plagued me. And I finally got it last year on Lace Market. And it was actually really cheap. It was like $200. So like, and it also came with the bonnet, which I was very pleased about. So my point is that like when you finally get that thing that you've been wanting for like, however long, it doesn't have to be years, it can be months. But when you finally get that thing, like the immense amount of satisfaction and dopamine and like joy that gives you is so excellent. And it also like gives you this like smugness and like wonderful, like warm, fuzzy feeling that you get when you get to finally wear it and like put it on. Oh, so good. But the point of that is the joy that EGL brings us, which I've already gotten into. But like, as you can tell, like just thinking about it, it makes me happy. So these are all practices. It is like leveling up. It's totally true. All right. So we are going to go into the next slides. So this is where we get into like the actual, like deeper parts of the information, which are really helpful. But just give me 1 second. Oh, it's really loud. Sorry. Hopefully my noise suppression is on. Okay. So EGL rituals that are also meditation practices. So first and foremost, we're going to start with tea services and what meditation that specifically looks like. Okay. Now, oh, that's awesome. I love reading the GLBs. I have a ton of them. Sadly though, like after you go through them a few times, they end up gathering dust on your bookshelf. But that's part of the reason why people resell them so often, is that I think that it's really wonderful that we are constantly circulating them within the community, so that way more people get to see them, because like there's nothing quite like holding a GLB in your hand. But anyway, so tea service. This is a really good example of mindfulness, okay? Because as I mentioned previously, the attention to detail, protocols, etiquette, and rules of tea service are very similar to mindfulness. This is ideal for cultivating awareness in daily life and within the body. It's great. It's really, really great for cultivating mental presence. And you'll see why I made that specification in a minute. But mindfulness is the type of meditation that most people think of when they think of meditation. The sit still, clear your mind, don't think about anything kind of mindfulness, or be present mindfulness. Okay. People tend to mix up mindfulness and Zen meditation like pretty frequently, and they are not the same thing, but they are a little bit similar. Next, coordinates. Okay. So, or coordinations of your outfits, cords. coordinates are such a hard word to say, you know, I've always felt that way. But anyway, visualization meditation. Okay. When you are envisioning how a chord will look in your mind, you are engaging in visualization. Okay. This is excellent for imagining new possibilities, creative ideas, insights, and perspectives. And it doesn't just work with chords. It also works with trying to imagine, like, not just the things you already have, but the things that you're considering buying. For example, like if there's a dress you really, really like, or like a piece you really, really like, you know, imagining it in tandem with the rest of your wardrobe. And if you think those colors would work, or if, you know, you would have to buy an entirely new color of items to put it together, which is the place where you don't want to be unless you are like dedicated to doing that, you know, or in the very beginning. But visualization is really helpful for other things also, like crafting and like creating accessories for Lolita, and also, you know, sewing and things like that, like the crafty part of Lolita. Which I think unfortunately has kind of gone a little bit by the wayside over the mass number of years that I've been in the community. But I think it's really important still to me because I like making stuff, and being creative is fun. Like, but anyway, so preparing for meetups, expansive meditation. Now, I did mention this earlier. When you are attempting to relax to prevent excitement from turning into nerves, as I previously mentioned, if you can tell the difference, at least I can't. Expansive meditation is enormously grounding. It is releasing all of that inward focus to expand outward into the environment, so that way you can cultivate physical presence. Now, these are really, this is really interesting actually also, because this specific, one of these specific techniques I actually used before we started this panel. And so it's actually very easy to do, and it doesn't take that much time, because like I said, I only did it for like a minute and a half. Okay. And so that specific meditation that I really like to do for that, it takes about 15 minutes if you've never done it before. However, the more you get the hang of it, which takes like maybe 2 or 3 times, like it can take like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute even. And so it's really, really helpful for if you are like me and get really anxious before meets, or in general in your life. All right, so next, joy seeking. As we previously mentioned, this is one of my favorite things about Lolita, and about, you know, all alternative fashion. I am goth because I love gothic clothing and gothic music, and I love, you know, the intersection of elegant gothic Lolita also. So there is also this, like, I think that this is really, really important, this joy-seeking behavior, because it's really good for our mental health. But specifically, this is a somatic practice. And essentially what that means is that it's within the body, because our emotions live within our body. There is a general misconception that our emotions are like in our head, and also our thoughts are in our head. But this is kind of the difference between like our head and heart, for example. So if you can think of your emotions as being in your body and your thoughts being in your brain, it is definitely a little bit easier to conceive of the fact that you kind of have 2 brains in a way. You have your emotional brain and your thinking brain. So there is like thinking and being, okay? And your body is not just a vehicle for your brain. Like it also has its own like way of being that needs attention also. And somatic practices are specifically really helpful for this. But how it relates to Lolita is seeking out specific motifs, like I mentioned earlier, that we love the most. It's purposely creating the emotion of joy in our bodies. So this is a somatic or bodily practice of building up emotion. It's perfect for getting to know the emotional centers of your physical body, especially if you are like me and you tend to think too much, or if you're anxious, or if like you're like overthinker. Like this somatic practices are the one that you should be focused on, like before anything else, 1000%, because it's very, very grounding. But just as an example, a somatic practice is like physically in your body. You don't have to sit still. You can, but you can do like somatic yoga, for example. You can do martial arts. You can do dance even. There are so many different ways to do like somatic work with the physical body. EFT tapping is also a really good example of like a pseudo meditation that you can do that is somatic. Next, we're going to talk about wearing EGL. Now, this one is very interesting because, like I said before, people get mindfulness and Zen kind of confused, and that's okay, but they are not the same thing. Where mindfulness, you are, more present and you're more attention to detail, and you are like being like creating space and presence for your experience within the space. Zen meditation is really good for nothing. And by that, I mean doing nothing, like literally doing nothing. Like if you have ever done some disassociation and like kind of stared at a wall, you're doing Zen meditation. And the irony is that if you are like consistently like activated, or like if you've had issues with being activated a lot in the past, like I used to be, you have to do that sometimes. Disassociation is like an on-off switch basically for your brain, for it to reset and recalibrate, which is another reason why meditation is so deeply important for our physical experiences. It helps us reorient ourselves in physical reality. And so Zen meditation sounds very, very simple, but it's actually really important. The words bury me in brand come to mind. Because when you really think about bury me in brand, doesn't it sound like peaceful? Doing nothing? I guess being dead. It's dark, but just like imagine if you were just sleeping, you're doing nothing. It's peaceful. And so the peace and stillness of this, like if this specific thing has appeal of just letting everything go and not thinking about anything, which is the thing that people tend to think meditation is, which in this particular instance it is, then Zen meditation is a really great way to do as much nothing as possible. It's really, really excellent for decompression and serenity, like really just chilling out. Disassociating, eyes going in two different directions, So obviously I will say as a caveat to this, that disassociation clinically can be bad. Too much of a good thing can also be bad. Too much of a bad thing. No, it doesn't work the other way. Never mind. Scratch that. But definitely too much of disassociation can kind of disconnect you from your physical experience and body, and that can be negative. But to be fair, like if you overdo like meditation, even as beneficial as it can also be not great. If you are too highly metacognitive, you tend to like not really internalize your own emotional states. And so that can be unhelpful. So, but I am also talking, to be fair, like to be absolutely clear, I'm talking about people who meditate like every single day and have been doing it for like years upon years, like decades and decades, It's a mistake to think of meditation as like the cure for all our mental ills, because it's not. Meditation techniques are almost always just really, really good for resetting our perspectives and resetting our brain. So that way we can kind of come to another situation or the same situation with like a fresh new insight and getting in contact with ourselves. However, it is not a cure-all by any stretch of the imagination. And so treating it like that is not very helpful, actually. You can drink too much water and drown. So, as an example. But karaoke, as a last thing, sound meditation. Okay. Now, sound meditation is actually something also that I do. I am a sound therapist. And so I basically can take like singing bowls and chimes and tuning forks and all of my instruments. I have so many drums even, and be able to like move the energy and move the emotional states of the people in the room. And that is the point of sound meditation. But the reason I mentioned karaoke in the context of EGL and meditation is that If you are singing, this is also an excellent way to have catharsis, to change your energetic state, and to feel happy, or to express your anger, or express your sadness, or express like any emotion that might be harder to express like otherwise. And so singing specifically is incredibly cathartic way to express. And I do believe that it is under the umbrella of meditation because of that. But sound meditation is a really wide subject by itself, but it can start with the voice. But this is really, really great for shifting your energy, either ramping it all the way up, like confidence and joy and happiness and like even anger, and rage, or calming down and like letting it all out, like, rage, sadness, listlessness, if you listen to Nirvana or Radiohead. And so like basically what I'm saying is that like music itself is so enormously powerful within this realm. And to think of it in this context, you have the power to change your mood depending on the music you listen to, and especially if you sing it. So keep that in mind if you especially like karaoke. Next, so we are going to talk about the image of meditation. I did briefly mention this earlier, but the point of all of this has been majorly to explain that the image of meditation does not have to look like flowing robes, yoga pants, or even sitting silently for hours, okay? Like if your purpose for meditation is to slow down your mind, minimize stress, and then there are tons of ways to incorporate EGL. Like I said, in the very beginning, when I first got into meditation, because I never really thought that it was going to be something that I would do for other people for the rest of my life. But now I'm like so happy that I am doing that. But my point is that when I first started, I never considered that like that's what I would end up doing. If you had asked me that like 15 years ago, I would have probably laughed. Like me, the most anxious person on earth, teaching other people meditation, hilarious. But that being said, it wasn't until I really started my business, like really started teaching people how to meditate like frequently, and like really taking it seriously, like how I wanted to present myself within these spaces, that I started thinking about like what other meditators look like. And so what I was thinking was that like I live in the high Rockies, which is, why, if a lot of you guys live in like closer to Denver, why a lot of you don't see me like on the regular basis at meetups. I live like, the tower, like far, far away from everybody. But so where I live is very close to like touristy areas, like around like Glenwood and Carbondale. And so what I see when I go to like other people's meditation classes, because of course it's my favorite thing. So I go to learn, from other people frequently. I see the uniform, where like they wear these like flowing white clothes, like linens, and like, like they're always like fresh and like moisturized, and like they're, wearing like either yoga, like, I don't know, leisure wear, or like active leisure wear, like yoga pants and like leggings, and like from Lululemon or whatever. And so my point is that like that's the image that I have had of meditators originally, especially when I was first starting my business. And I was kind of worried that people wouldn't take me seriously if I didn't look like that. And that's not true. I have not found that to be true at all. In fact, I have found personally that it has been to my benefit to be authentic and to choose to just dress how I dress. And of course, I'm not usually in like full Lolita for meditations, because it's encumbering, not because I don't want to be. But I don't necessarily want to be in something tight when I'm meditating, and I don't want my meditators to feel uncomfortable in their clothes either. So I just tell them to wear whatever they want, because the image of it is not that important realistically. But the point is that like it doesn't have to be one thing. Okay. You can meditate in Lolita if you want to. You can meditate in, something frilly or like your nightgown or like something cute if you want to. Like you can make it into a, Victorian nightgown party. Like I have done this actually with my friends and meditated in that. And it was really, really fun. And so my point is that like these images that we have of like the wellness space are a specific person generally, or like a specific demographic. That doesn't necessarily have to apply to us. We're allowed to do whatever we want. There are no rules as far as meditation is concerned, generally speaking. So you can't really do it wrong, and you can't dress wrong unless you are uncomfortable, which is probably, something you don't want, but it's not wrong necessarily. Yes, Victorian nightgown meditation party. So I actually did this in October of last year, because I had a bunch of friends like come up and for like our Halloween like little get together thing, and it was really, really fun. And one of the evenings I was like, we're doing a nightgown party, so dress in your vintage nightgowns, because we like that stuff. So vintage nightgowns we did, and then we got to play music together, and then we all got to meditate together, and I got to do sound weaving for my whole friend group, and it was awesome. It was so awesome. But my point is like, we are allowed to incorporate these things into our lives however we want. They are meant to work for us, not against us. And there is no specific way that we need to look to be able to do them. This is long-winded, but hopefully you get the gist. All right. So we're going to get into incorporating meditative practices into daily life. And then we're going to get into our questions really briefly, and then we're going to do our meditation, and then we'll be finished. So I really appreciate you guys holding out for so long. I hope that this information has been helpful and useful to you. But incorporating meditations or meditative practices anyway into your daily life. These are suggestions, by the way. You don't have to do any of these. You can do one of them. You can do all of them. It's up to you. It just depends on like what appeals to you, really. So first and foremost, we've already talked about this one, visualizing new chords with what you already have. Now, this is slightly different than what we mentioned before, but using the creative process to create new combinations with things that you already have is super, super freeing and satisfying. It is like finding like gold in a mine, or like candy where you didn't expect to find candy, I guess. I don't know, being given a treat. When you take things in your wardrobe that you have had for like however long that you've never combined before, and then find out that they combined beautifully, like they were meant to be together, it is so deeply satisfying and it feels so good. And so if you haven't really done this very often, I highly suggest it. It's also very environmentally conscious. So we tend to have a problem with overbuying, especially this community, like, because, especially now with like our like much better access to Taobao, like it's so easy to buy too much. So like, for example, this purple dress in the example picture I own, I love this dress so much. It's so beautiful. But I mean, of course, did I need to buy it? No, I did not. But did I really want to buy it? Yes, I did. And so I did. And it was worth it. And I don't regret it at all. But my point is it's really easy to go overboard if you don't reel yourself in sometimes. And it's not always necessary to buy a whole new outfit. It is actually really, really fun to just combine things that you already have in new ways. I have done this many times and come up with completely brand new outfits with pieces that I've had for like decades. And it's like having a brand new wardrobe without buying anything. It's so great. Anyway, dress up for no reason. This is a huge one. Okay. I do this when I'm like really feeling down and I'm feeling like really, really sad, or like I'm feeling like not great about myself, because we all have those days, we can't all be 100% all of the time, and that's okay. It's very normal. But dressing up, even though you don't have anything to do and you have nowhere to go, you will probably make a thing to do after you dress up, which is usually what I do. But that's okay. The point is not to not doing it. The point is not to not do anything. The point is to, like get past the rut and, look in the mirror and see yourself in your clothes and feel into them and like experience the joy that they bring you. So even if you have nowhere to go, just it will elevate your mood usually. And if it doesn't elevate your mood and it makes you feel worse, you're being way too hard on yourself, as a caveat. I have to put that out there because this has happened to me before. And I realized that the reason it happened is because I was spiraling, not because it was the clothes' fault, you know? And so that's a different subject. So if you feel worse, like that's a moment where you need actual like deep meditation as opposed to like just, you know, shifting your vibe or your mood. Okay. Now, taking time to be present with your wardrobe. Now, this is a really interesting one because I feel like we mostly already do this a lot of the time, especially if you are blessed with space and the full closet. I am not. And so I have to really take time and like pull things out and look at things. My closet is very tiny for the large amount of things that are in it. Sort of crammed in there, which I really hate, but I just don't have more space. So if it were up to me, I would have a mannequin that I would be able to like put clothing on and be able to look at and like look at them as like pieces of art and put like cords on them that I'm like building. So I have like a physical, like visual representation. But the thing is that we've already put so much work into curating our collections. And even if you've just started, you are also still doing that because you're thinking about like what you want and like the things that you might buy and like your dream items that you're thinking about on the horizon. You know, you're still curating them mentally, even if they're not there physically. But try taking more time to like really appreciate the effort that you have already put into it and your taste, because you have unique taste. The thing about Lolita is that even though there are specific rules for the fashion and that, you know, there's the silhouette and there are like, you know, the conversation about blouse or no blouse and like the conversation about petticoat or no petticoat and the conversation about showing your knees or not showing your knees. And like, there's so many conversations about these things, but ultimately at the end of the day, your taste is your taste. And someone else's taste will be their taste and it will be different. And that's okay. Like your own personal expression within Lolita is yours alone. And of course, some of those things, if, you know, they're like super far outside of the you know, the realm of Lolita, they might be like on the edge. That's still okay. You know, sometimes you can still incorporate those things. A really good example of this is like punk Lolita. I think like this specific style is really difficult to coordinate because you have to really have a pretty strong foundation of the fashion before really getting into like the like subtypes and like, you know, the little like different styles within Lolita. Arrow Lolita is also a huge underlying like difficult one to do, but it's a really good example of Lolita that's like on the border of not quite Lolita, but it like definitely is. You know what I mean? So my point is that like within the culture and within like the fashion rules and within like the structure of Lolita itself, we have all of this variation and there's all these different ways to do it. I even did a New Goth cord many years ago. And I will say this, I don't think it was actually Lolita because it just wasn't detailed enough. But it definitely straddled the line between New Goth and Lolita. And I thought it was really interesting to like incorporate Lolita into something that tends to be very minimal. And I loved like stretching my brain in this way and like just trying new things out. And it definitely wasn't a Lolita cord. It had the silhouette, but that was about it. But my point is that like, it's okay to experiment in this way. Personally, that is how I feel. I think that really the trick is just where it is, like, is it Lolita or is it not Lolita? You know, because sometimes if you experiment, it just ends up outside of the realm and that's okay. It's not a big deal. You know, they're still your clothes and they're still beautiful. Anyway, it's tangent time. Taking time to mend things. This is another big one. Hand sewing and machine sewing. And I did kind of mention this earlier, but they're both really great ways to relax. Plus taking the care that, you know, taking that care means that you can wear it again, especially if it's already like damaged, like it has a hole, or like maybe when if your waist ties came off, or maybe the buttons on something came off, or like whatever. Taking time to mend your wardrobe really infuses it with love and attention and kindness and mindfulness. And even though you are devoting time and attention to your clothes, it is an act of self-devotion. And so because there's something you're going to wear. So this absolutely is a meditative practice that you can do to incorporate that into your daily life. So it really just depends on which one of these appeals to you. I made this list short for a reason. You can find your own ways of like incorporating meditation and like meditative techniques into your daily life. Now that you have like a pretty firm understanding of like what meditation actually even is. So we are going to move on to ultimately what matters is where you put your attention, your intentions, and taking the time to be present in the moment. Your nervous system will thank you. This is the point. This is the point of why we wear Lolita. It's the point of why we wear any alternative fashion. It's the point of why we meditate. So they're the same. Now we're going to do our Q&A section. If you have any questions, there are tons of comments that I'm sorry I haven't really been like super looking at. Like every now and again, I've been glancing and saying stuff, but this is such a long presentation, so I just wanted to get through it real quick. But let's see if you guys have any questions.
Oh no, I think you froze.
I don't know what just happened. I guess my internet popped out and popped back in really quick. Let me set this back up really quick.
Yeah, sometimes it'll just okay.
It's okay. All right. Let's see here. I'm going back through this. Yes, absolutely. Doing ritual for breakfast. It doesn't have to be ceremonial. Absolutely, it doesn't. Replaying your idea of how the meetup might go is one of your greatest secret pastimes of J fashion pants. That's a fact. I have done this so many times, and it's the irony of it is that it's never how I think it's going to go. I have never been right, not once. Let's see. Okay. It reminds you of Kamikaze Girls and how many of these activities Momoko does and how I always felt meditative watching her doing these scenes. That's totally such a good point. When I was doing putting this presentation together, geez, I don't know why, but it didn't even occur to me. But yeah, absolutely, that is a really good indication of exactly what I'm talking about. Intentional nothingness, yes. Let's see. I love when I disassociate at an appropriate time. I know it is hard with ADHD. I am also neurodivergent. I have ADHD as well. So like this is one of the reasons why this is like my hyper focus. Like the fact that I have been this deep into it and getting further and further deep into this subject, for years now is like, I guess it's my purpose in life, the hyper focus that just won't quit. Yes, too much of a bad thing, also bad. Thank you so much for your compliments, you guys. You guys are so sweet. Yes, the leisure wear uniform of Colorado. Let's see. How awesome. There are therapists in the chat. Yes, Lolitas in healthcare. Let's see. That's awesome. Oh my gosh, you guys are so into this. I'm so happy. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know. I would love to get through them because we are going to get into the meditation next. And it'll only be about 15 minutes, at maybe 20 at absolute max. But then the then the panel will basically be over. So I'm not going to keep you for too much longer. I really appreciate you guys like having patience with this presentation, because again, it's like a subject that's really important to me. Since of course, meditation is like my everyday life, and Lolita is my heart, really. So let's see. The visualization of the meetup being different from how it actually goes just means to get the experience the meetup twice. That's so true. Yes, but I think that usually my experience is that because I've been in the community for so long, and I've also been in so many different comms. I was in the Tokyo comm for a short period of time, like while I lived in Japan. And I've also been in, I also started the Mid-South Lolita meetup in Memphis, Tennessee, when I first moved there. And so the experience in Memphis was so drastically different to the experience in Tokyo. The people in Tokyo were like generally nice, but because they were from all over the world, it was like kind of weird and like a little bit elitist. But the irony was that it wasn't the Japanese Lolitas who were like that. It was the American Lolitas that were like that. And so you just kind of like learned to like give certain people like a wide berth. But I remember being so anxious going to these meetups like so often that like sometimes I would make friends, which was really nice. But like a lot of the times I was just like silent and like didn't know who to talk to. And like, of course, this was so long ago, like back in the day, that I really wasn't as like on top of meditation as I am now. Like nowadays, I feel like, especially since I'm probably older than all of them, like I wouldn't feel intimidated by them anymore. But like the big thing with that is that like I would envision like, oh, meeting friends and like having a great time. And then like I would get there and people were like not friendly. And I was like, oh geez, like I really didn't visualize this very well. By contrast, of course, the community that I built in Memphis originally were so kind. Like everyone was so nice. But to be fair, like our community was weird. Like the vast majority of us were all Gothic Lolitas. There were only like 2 or 3 maybe sweet Lolitas out of a group of like 25 people. And so we were like, I don't know. I think that has an interesting mix, but I don't know like what the real reason was, but we were all like actual friends outside of the fashion. And so things were very different. So I wasn't ever like stressed about that, It's just people you don't know. I wish I lived closer too. Oh, awesome. Well, that's okay. All right. So if there aren't going to be any questions in the chat, we are going to move on to the guided meditation. So first and foremost, before I get into this, I would like you all to make sure that you are comfortable, that you're not going to want to move around too much. And by comfortable, I mean sitting or laying down, or if you want to do a walking meditation, that is also available to you. If you've ever done one before, like you would prefer to stand, that's up to you. If you do a walking meditation, then don't close your eyes, because I mean, that might be hard to do both at the same time. I like to meditate sitting up, but it's up to you, your choice. Again, these tools are for you to use, so they need to be useful for you within your environment and your frame. So we're going to get like just really, really comfortable, and I'm going to give you about like a minute to just like get into that. And I am going to personally get into the headspace to lead you guys. Yes, get snuggly. Also, if you would like to like burn incense or a candle or anything like that, that's totally fine. But please, if you have pets, make sure that they're like out of the way where your pets can get to them, because it can be dangerous otherwise. Okay. Now that we are all nice and situated. And don't worry if you absolutely need to move around, or if you picked a position that actually isn't going to keep you comfortable, like while we're doing this, it's okay to move. You don't have to be stark still. I don't generally teach people like sitting straight up and, back erect and all of these things, partly because I am neurodivergent and that is enormously distracting to me. And I imagine it's enormously distracting for a lot of other neurodivergent people. And so I don't teach that. If you want to do it and that is something that you are practiced in, go for it. But that being said, we're all going to close our eyes and just kind of like settle in for just a moment. Get comfortable with having your eyes closed. And then we are going to take a nice deep breath all the way into our bellies and let it all the way out. And when I say all the way out, what I mean is that your lungs contract just a little bit on the way out. We're going to do this 2 more times. So breathing all the way in and all the way out. And one last time, breathing in and all the way out. Now, I will preface before we get into the meditation that if I ask you to do anything that you are uncomfortable with, you do not have to do it. Again, these are tools that are meant for you, so they are meant to work for you. Just take what works for you and what doesn't, and leave what doesn't. Now, we are going to focus on our breath for a very brief amount of time. And this is the type of meditation that tends to be a little bit difficult, especially for people who are neurodivergent and sitting still and focusing on one thing. And so if you have to move around a little bit, that's okay. You might see me move around a little bit if your eyes are open. That's totally fine. But we're going to notice our natural rhythm of breathing. And if you find that that makes you anxious, you can count instead up to 50 slowly. But for everyone else, as you notice your breath, as you breathe in, your lungs expand. That slight pause in between. And as you breathe out, your lungs contract. Alternatively, noticing the warmth and coolness underneath your nose as you breathe in and out. Just noticing what it feels like to breathe. Noticing what it feels like to breathe. And remember that breathing is a cycle. It is not 2 separate things. just noticing. And if you get distracted or you start thinking about something else, that's totally fine. It is normal and natural for it to happen. If you notice that you have gotten distracted, try not to be judgmental or angry or push anything away. Just acknowledge it, observe it, allow it to be, and then gently refocus back on your cycle of breathing. You can think of your thoughts as if they are clouds in the sky, in the environment of your mind. As they come in of their own volition, they also leave of their own volition if you don't hold on to them. And you just let them go. Focusing on the cycle of our breath. The cycle and movement of being alive. Very nice. Now, like I said, we were only going to do that briefly. Now, if you were able to focus on your breath for any amount of time, you have done excellently. Even for a few seconds, that's enough to begin. Now, this specific type of meditation tends to be very difficult for neurodivergent people. However, it is still very useful for cultivating focus and cultivating metacognition. So even 2 or 3 minutes, 5 minutes a day with that is really useful. Now, for our actual technique, that's going to be significantly more helpful for probably most people in this group. I'd like you all to take a nice deep breath in, just as we did in the beginning, and a full breath all the way out. And we're going to do an expansive meditation. Now, first and foremost, I'd like you to notice all of the sounds in your general vicinity. All of them. Without trying to focus on anything specific. Noticing the soundscape of your environment. Allowing all of the sounds to simply be there. And relaxing into your sense of hearing. Relaxing into your sense of hearing. The sounds in front of us. To the sides of us. And the sounds behind us. Relaxing into all of the sensory input that you can hear. Allowing the sounds to be part of your experience in this moment in physical reality. relaxing into your sense of hearing. Excellent. Now we are going to add another sensation. Next, noticing our sense of smell. Noticing all of the smells in front of us. To the sides of us. And behind us. Allowing ourselves to relax into our sense of smell. Relaxing into our sense of smell. Allowing all of the sensory input that we can smell to be part of our experience in this moment. Allowing it to be part of us and allowing ourselves to be part of it. Excellent. Now we are going to add another sensation. Noticing our sensation of physical touch. The things that are the closest to our bodies. Noticing and relaxing into all of that sensory input. The input towards the front of us. The input to the sides of us. And the input towards the backs of us. Allowing ourselves to relax into our sensory, physical experience of touch. Allowing ourselves to fully relax into all of the sensory input on our bodies. Allowing them to be there. Allowing all of that sensory input to be part of us, part of our experience. And allowing ourselves to be part of them as well. Perfect. Excellent work, everyone. Now, I'd like you to notice the sensory experience that you have relaxed into on your bodies. And add your sense of smell again to this space. Experiencing both at the same time. Your sense of touch, your sense of smell. Relaxing into both. And finally adding your sense of hearing to the other two as well. Relaxing into your sense of hearing, your sense of smell, and your sense of touch. Allowing yourself to fully become one with your physical environment. You are in it. You are part of it. It is part of you. This is what it feels like to be physically present. Now I'd like you to just take a moment and notice what it feels like on the inside of your body without judgment, only observation. Notice what physical presence feels like to you personally. The experience of being one with your environment. Notice how grounded you feel, how connected, perhaps quiet, open. Perhaps nothing, and that's okay too. There's no wrong way to experience. You might also get some visuals that just pop up. That's normal. But if you don't, that's normal too. Everyone's internal experience is just a little different. Perfect. Now we are going to start to come back. And to do that, I would like you all to notice your hearing yet again. But this time, I would like you to notice any sounds in your vicinity, such as cars driving on the highway through an open window, sound of your electronics, people speaking in another room. Are the sounds loud or quiet? Next, I would like you to notice again your sense of smell, but this time noticing specifics again. Perhaps the smell of laundry detergent, the smell of incense or candle. Next, I would like you to notice your physical body sensations again. This time noticing perhaps the specifics of the clothing on your body, on your skin. The sensation of the wind moving through the room, as minuscule as it may be, air movement. And also noticing the structure underneath you, the chair, bed, or floor, whatever you chose. And noticing if that structure is hard or soft. Notice how it grounds you, how it keeps you in one place. Excellent. Next, we're going to gently open and close our hands. And if they feel a little weird, that's okay. It'll go away over time. Your circulation has just improved a bit. Cortisol and vasopressin went down. Opening and closing our hands. Getting back a feeling into our physical movement and bodies. And this is optional, but if you would like to, you can do a stretch with me by taking in a nice deep breath as you bring your arms slowly up above your head. And reaching out, reaching up as high as you can. Stretching out that upper back. Taking in that nice deep breath. And as you take it out, breathing out, slowly bringing your arms back down. Whew. And after taking in a nice deep breath, another breath all the way out. You can gently open your eyes when you are ready. Now, we are about exactly at time for the panel. So, I will just say very gently, very quietly, because it's going to take a little bit of time for you to get back into your normal space, but I really do hope that you take this gentle, self-compassionate energy and calm into the rest of your day, and that you take this technique that I just taught you wherever you like and use it wherever you need to. The main conclusion that I would like to mention about meditation is that it can assist you in almost all your areas of life, and it is especially helpful when used in tandem with your current practices, like dressing up. It is meant to be a tool to our benefit, yours and mine, and everyone's on earth. I genuinely believe that it is something that everyone should be able to do, and sometimes that just means finding the right technique. It just trying out a few different kinds might help to find which work best for you, and see how your perspective shifts. See if you might find benefit and help in meditation after all, especially if you've tried it before and it didn't work. Especially if the first brief breath meditation was difficult for you. Now, I am really, really appreciative of all of you guys. Thank you so much for coming to my panel. Thank you so much for sticking through all 90 minutes of it. It is very, very flattering that so many of you stayed for the whole thing. And I will see you guys next time, hopefully, and whenever that may be. But if you would like to meditate with us on a regular basis, I do these guided meditations every single Sunday at 8 p.m. And just have to join our community. They're free. So anyway, I really appreciate you guys. So